Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Clara and Sarah, for a great introduction into forests and cities. As Phil mentioned, I spent early parts of my career in rural forests, and if you had asked me then what trees and cities had to do with my work, I would have been hard-pressed to come up with an answer. Over the last decade, I've had the pleasure of working with the Natural Areas Conservancy in New York City Parks Department in New York City to begin to learn about forests in cities. And as you've heard today, there are forests in cities. And what I hope to do today is make the linkage in your minds between forests in cities and the forests out in the country or our rural forests, and how we could benefit from the expertise that's being gained in managing forests in cities, and how the urban forest managers could benefit from expertise learned over the last 100 years by rural foresters. One of the things that we've come to realize is that our urban forests are experiencing conditions today that our forests in the country will experience in the future with global climate change and increased urbanization. I want to take a step back for a minute and just think about the land area we're talking about. Our national forest system is about 193 million acres of public land in 44 states, and about 9% of the total land area in the United States. Today, our urban land area is about 68 million acres. The projections are that in 2060, we'll have about 163 million acres of urban land in this country, approaching the magnitude of the area of our national forest systems. And if we think about the numbers of people that live near our national forests, this map shows us that we have over 1 million people living within 50 miles of many of our national forests in this country. This illustrates the impact that people could have on our rural forests, and as we just learned, that the forests in our cities are being impacted by anthropogenic stressors. If we take a step a little further back and look at a map of the woody biomass in the United States, we can see where it's concentrated in this country. We can overlay it with some current projections by Dave Nowak in a recent paper in about 2005, showing where our urban areas are in the year 2000. And you can see that they intersect with where the woody biomass exists in this country, again illustrating the linkage between urbanization and our rural forests. If we take a step forward in time to 2050, Nowak et al. Show that increased urbanization will occur within the forested biomass areas of this country, again illustrating the direct linkage between urban areas and the forests in this country. And this brings me to sort of the central thesis that we've been working on. A colleague of mine, Max Piana, and Clara, who you just heard from, and myself, recently had a paper accepted into Frontiers in Ecology and the Environment. We've been thinking hard about the expertise that it takes to restore forests and cities and deal with the many stressors. They may not be unique within cities, but they certainly are exacerbated. Exotic invasive pests, species, and climatic conditions that are warmer due to the urban heat island, and chemical conditions, frankly, with pollution and things like that, are much more intense in cities. And our urban forest managers are dealing with these and learning new techniques on how to deal with them. Conversely, our rural foresters have been studying forest management and engaging in forest management for over 100 years through silvicultural practices. And we've been thinking about the intersection between these two and how we might engage across this urban to rural continuum to more effectively manage our forests and all the forests in this country. I'd like to take a look at the word silviculture, which is traditionally considered in our rural forests, and unpack it a little bit. And if we look at the definition of silviculture that's on the U.S. Forest Service website, we can see many concepts that are in common between managing rural and urban forests. Thinking about controlling the establishment and growth and composition, health, and quality of forests, thinking about the diverse needs and values of landowners and society, thinking about ways to restore and create recreation opportunities on a sustainable basis in both rural and urban forests. If we go a little farther, we can see areas that might not be so palatable in our cities. We aren't managing for timber, we're not thinning, harvesting, and prescribed burning was on my list to be crossed out, but as you heard from Clara, St. Louis is actually engaging in this practice within the city boundaries. But still, it's not widely used as a management technique in our cities. But you can really see that silviculture is not a mutually exclusive idea between urban and rural. And so we developed this framework. There could be areas that need to be modified, and certainly will be areas that need to be modified when we think about a silvicultural framework. But again, taking from what's been done in rural areas and thinking about the first step in managing national forest areas or some of our rural forested areas is thinking about type mapping. Where is our resource and what does it look like? Assessing our stands and beginning to think about projective modeling of the growth and species composition within our urban forests. These are all things that we've been doing for a long, long time in our rural forested natural areas. And our urban forests would certainly need to take into account other variables and ways of thinking about it, but these basic steps would remain the same. And if we move on, we can think about how those first few steps could impact planning and policy, such as the Million Trees campaign that many people are familiar with in New York City and in other cities around the world. And then thinking about sort of park scale management goals. What kind of goals can we produce or make based upon the information gained from these assessment phases and modeling phases? And then moving on to think about creating silvicultural prescriptions for our urban forested natural areas. Think about stand-specific management treatments and long-term management plans. Maybe we're not managing for timber or board feet, but we certainly are managing for good quality trees and healthy forests that are sustainable. And then what kinds of operational activities might we engage in? Again, we're not going to be bringing harvesters and foragers into our urban forested natural areas, but certainly there are operational activities that could be engaged in that could increase our ability to have a more sustainable and healthy natural area within our cities. And with that, I'll leave it to questions and discussion, and it's been my great pleasure to present to you.